I don't know about you all, but I really do like the generic intro theme that we have with the countdown. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. 170 episodes down. And while we are just merely 2 shakes and a lamb's tail away from 200 here soon enough, we're even closer to the final game of the 2025 NFL regular season. We've made it through yet another NFL season. This one arguably being the most chaotic that we've got to cover here on the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. Myself, the Iceman, leading the proceedings as usual in this one. And joining me in the tradition of one of us missing the Super Bowl preview episode every single year, this time the games master, the champion, has dictated that it is his time. I mean, maybe he'll join us at the very end of the night. But right now, it's just myself and the Podfather Rick. How we doing?
I still can't believe that we're here doing this instead of being, spies in a bush somewhere in
his personal
in Williston Park or wherever the hell he is, to just watch proceedings and continue on with our play-by-play that we had so valiantly done over text messaging. But it is what it is at this point. I guess there's a game that's going on, and I guess we have to talk about it. And so that's why we're here. Good otherwise. I don't know how much looking forward to the Super Bowl, to be honest with you, but we'll get there. We'll get there. So
to say the very least, it's certainly a matchup that people have had their qualms about, people have been vocal about, but I think at the end of the day, I think it'll be a relatively interesting matchup. But
sure,
we'll get to that in a couple of minutes.
Sure,
here. Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue on in the proceedings, of course, you guys could tell Ghosts a superb owl preview, because there is going to be plenty, if not majority, Super Bowl talk in this one. But before we get to that, fun football chaos is the tagline of this program, so we need to have a little bit of fun here. And of course, back by relatively popular demand, and I think this is going to be, it's a relatively favorite for us going forward. Mm-hmm. It is yet another edition, ladies and gentlemen, of Keep 4, Cut 4. Murgatroyd Skittle for Super Bowl MVP.
Murgatroyd Skittle.
So as we have Rick's Super Bowl MVP betting odds, let's continue it. Rick, you read my mind with this one. To continue with the Keep 4, Cut 4s and how fun they've been. I've had a blast when it comes to them. I think it's been a good fun time. We are going to do Keep 4, Cut 4 Super Bowl MVPs. This is a fun one. This was some would say slapdash list that was put together. It is a list of 8 names, 8 interesting names, 8 fun performances, but not the obvious ones. I was kind of telling Rick about this before we started, but it's like, this is not the obvious ones. Like, there's no Tom Brady's, no Patrick Mahomes, or am I lying? But no, like there's not some of the obvious ones. Cause what have we always said about the Super Bowl MVP? It's like, they're going to give it to the quarterback in some way, shape or form. I think last year and the year before that, with the Chiefs Niners Super Bowl, with last year's Chiefs Eagles, heck, even you could argue to an extent with the first Chiefs Eagles, but I think it was more so prevalent last year's. It's like, the quarterback doesn't need to get the Super Bowl MVP here. You could give it to a defensive player, player, but they love giving it to the quarterback. So there are a couple quarterbacks on this list, but I tried to be a little bit different, and I tried to go with other positions, other things. Maybe I should have gotten a little bit more defense on this one, some would say, once we go through the list, but it is going to be 8 blind names, and Rick will keep 4, cut 4 in this one.
Still waiting for that first ever punter or kicker to be Super Bowl MVP. We were close. That Patriots Rams game that was 13-3, we were pretty close. I
was gonna say, ironically, the last time the Patriots were in the Super Bowl was the closest we could have came to a punter or kicker becoming the Super Bowl MVP. Honestly,
it's very true.
It's truly a disgrace that Adam Vinatieri was robbed. He should have been a Super Bowl MVP.
Terrible.
One of those first 3.
You had to give it to Tom, I guess, or Julian or whatever, But
I don't think he was around at that point. But no, it's going to be a fun one. So Rick, I have here 8 Super Bowl MVPs with their stats, and I'll leave this up to you. I would assume that the decision would be like, you think of it relative to the guy, but relative to the performance in the game and how good it was comparatively. I think that's where I would go, but I got 8 names here. So let's see how you do.
Okay.
First one, I'm not going to go in chronological order. I'm just kind of go all over the place, at least in terms of the way I've written it. It's not really chronological. So let's do it like this. Rick, Super Bowl MVPs, keep for, cut for. The Super Bowl MVP of the 2009 regular season Super Bowl, Santonio Holmes.
Now, see, it's quite funny that we're going to start off with this guy, this cat, if you will, because Justin's not here.
Indeed.
And we know that this was one of Justin's boys after he left Pittsburgh and went to the Jets. You know, I've Mike Tomlin's a friend of the show, and he always will be a friend of the show. But I wanted Arizona to win the Super Bowl really badly. Larry Fitzgerald deserved to win a Super Bowl at least once. He had. See, this is where I could make an argument for doing what was one of Bettman's smartest moves in the NHL, is giving the Conn Smythe in 03 to Jiggy instead of having it be a Devil that won it, because Jaguar played one of the best series for goaltenders that I've ever seen.
Right.
I think I'm going to cut this one because I think that they should have given the MVP to Larry Fitzgerald. Yes, Antonio Holmes did catch the winning touchdown and all that, but Fitz was unstoppable in that game. I think their stats were relatively comparable, I would say, but I think that Fitz was so good then, and he is so good of a player, and he'll probably get the call to the hall tomorrow night, that there's no question about that he should have been in over Santonio Holmes. So I will go cut Mr. Holmes on this one for me.
I don't blame you. Like, he definitely, like you said, Santonio Holmes put on a great performance. 9 catches, 131 yards, and the touchdown, the one big touchdown that won the game, right? The little toe tap into the end zone.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a phenomenal game. But like you said, Larry Fitzgerald, like, I can't even think of any other receivers duel in the history of the Super Bowl quite like this. Larry Fitzgerald, like you mentioned, 7 catches, 127 yards, 2 touchdowns. And what capped off what was just a stupidly good playoff run by him.
Yeah.
Still one of, like, if we ever do like a keep 4, cut 4 playoff runs, I it's going to be hard to take to topple Larry Fitzgerald's playoff run that he had.
Right.
so I don't necessarily blame you. You know, is this the right choice? Is this the wrong choice? We'll see. But let's continue with it. Rick, this is a fun one. I'll be outright. This is the only defensive player that is on this list.
Wow.
Really? Yeah. And
really?
This was, as I went through, I realized at the end, and it's like, well, it's too late now.
Okay, well, sure, fine, whatever.
It's kind of too late now. We have to put this together real quick.
All right.
2014's regular season Super Bowl MVP. 10 tackles. He recovered a fumble. He had a 69 yards. Nice. Pick 6. Malcolm Smith.
I was gonna say this was the Malcolm Smith game, wasn't it?
Yep. Well, this is also known as the game where the Seattle Seahawks bludgeoned the Denver Broncos in MetLife.
This game was over from from the start, basically from the jump.
It was the fumbled snap, and it went from there. It literally, you know, very few times in the history of football can you say, well, the game was over on the first snap. This was one of those times.
You can absolutely say that, because that is absolutely accurate in this case. Well, being that this is the only defensive player that you've got on this list, which, by the way, is fraudulent in of itself. I mean, no love for Von Miller, no love for Harvey Martin and Randy White, the first and only ever co-MVPs back in the Dallas Cowboys era. Like, come on, you're better than that. That being said, I mean, I think it's a testament to just how dominant he was in this game. That you have to give the love to the defensive guys. The offense in this game wasn't really that special. I mean, Russell Wilson was 18 of 25. Good on you, I suppose, for 206 and two tutties. But they were to Doug Baldwin and Jermaine Kearse. Those are not exactly, household names. Again, a case where if the game was closer, I would say the late, great Demaryius Thomas could have gotten it.
Mm-hmm.
But Malcolm Smith leading the defense the way that he did, yeah, absolutely. Keep this one for sure.
So, quick amendment, and I'll allow you to change. If I tell you this is no longer the only defensive player on this list, will that change your mind?
Nah, keep him still.
Okay.
Because I'm not buying into your fraudulent nonsense. Keep him.
Copy that. All right. So we're 1 for 1. We've cut Santonio Holmes, and we're keeping Malcolm Smith. All right, let's continue, Podfather. 1989 Super Bowl. I believe the matchup was Niners-Bengals, if I read the box score correctly. And the Super Bowl MVP was none other than 11 catches for 215 yards and a touchdown, Jerry Rice.
How is this one even a question?
Look, keep 4 cut for. You never know. Like, some are obvious, some you got to think about.
But how is this one even a question though? I mean, this is Jerry Rice. This is the most receiving yards in a Super Bowl in NFL history. 215. That hasn't been matched. This is Jerry Rice, the greatest wide receiver of all time. I mean, it's a fluke to me that he only won one of these, right? You know, because
he was the offense.
he was the guy. How is this? And also, it's a great run of small schools that had Super Bowl MVPs. I'm not sure if either of those guys are on your list. The two came before him, but great schools. Anything less than a keep on this one, you are not a football fan. I am sorry, but Jerry Rice, that performance, that name, that iconic atmosphere, 100%. This is an absolute keep for me.
There you go. All right.
Move on.
So we have our second keep here. So we're 2-1 so far in the keeps and cuts. It's going to be interesting. All right. Let's go forward a decade now. 1999 Super Bowl. The MVP that year, John Elway, had 336 passing yards, 1 touchdown to 1 interception, 1 rushing touchdown. He only had like 2 or 3 rushing yards in the game. Same game where Terrell Davis had over 100 rushing yards, but didn't finish with any rushing touchdowns. The year before is when Terrell Davis got his Super Bowl MVP. And Rod Smith had over 100 receiving yards and caught the 1 receiving touchdown passing touchdown from Elway. You understand what I'm saying. The only passing touchdown for the Broncos was caught by Rod Smith.
This one's tough. This one's a tough one for me because, again, I mean, it wasn't exactly a stellar performance by Elway, but it was a good offensive shout. 338. It's a really nice job in the pocket there. That being said, though, I brought up a name last week that I think probably deserved it. If I can just take a moment for myself to look at the play-by-play,
of course,
of what happened here, of where these interceptions were. That we know what they are. We know what we're talking about. They were. I mean, the game was pretty much in hand by that point, but still. Yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing that I could think of is that the game was pretty much in hand by the time that Darian Gordon had his 2 interceptions. But I mean, also Rod Smith, 5 catches for 100+ yards.
Yeah.
I think Denver is the one team that I could say that even though they had a Hall of Fame quarterback, the accolades should have gone to the guys around them. I think in 98 it went to Terrell Davis, which was well-deserved. I think 99 should have gone to Rod Smith, personally. Cut Elway and his gigantic teeth.
All right, John Elway, cut. I think this one is probably going to end up being an obvious one for you, so we'll see. 1984.
Is it an Alabama quarterback? Because the answer is always cut.
No, it's not. 1984's Super Bowl MVP in the matchup, I think it was the Reskins and the Raiders. Mm-hmm. Marcus Allen, 20 carries, 192 yards, 2 tutties.
I mean, again, the Raiders had a great defense that year. I mean, the game started because of a blocked punt in the end zone, And then you also had a 5-yard pick six. So the defense was great. Marcus Allen did more of his damage in the third quarter, but by that point, the game was pretty much over and done with. If I'm remembering correctly, I think Washington finally got on the board on a touchdown thanks to a John Riggins run. And then in the third quarter, there were 2 Marcus Allen touchdowns to really put the game on ice. But you could have made the argument that without Marcus Allen there, it would have been a low-scoring game, but the Raiders still had it well in hand. Not taking anything away from Marcus Allen, though, because that's another legendary performance when it comes to, rushing. Most rushing yards in the game in Super Bowl history, longest rushing touchdown in Super Bowl history at the time. See, you put me in a box here.
Yes, I did.
You really have. Because ideally,
which is always the goal of a keep for, cut for.
Yeah. Ideally, I want to say cut just because I want to give myself a little more momentum. But the logic of me putting Jerry Rice in the keep because of the records, I've got to do the same for Marcus Allen. Again, they were stat padding basically, but it's still one heck of a performance in the Super Bowl. So, yeah, I'll hold on to Marcus Allen for this one. I'll keep him.
Okay, there's your third keep. So we have 3 keeps and 2 cuts. So you only have 1 keep left and 2 cuts. So that's going to be key here. And really quick, in case people are yelling at me, it's like, are you getting the years wrong? Da-da-da. Look, I'm just reading off the list I have. If the list has the year that the month of the Super Bowl happened, get off my back. I'm still at least saying the correct Super Bowl winners.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah.
Well, so with that being said, see, you didn't believe me. You didn't believe me when I said I added another defensive player on this list just for you.
Okay.
And you should have believed me because I do.
If it's the obvious one though,
yes, it is. Von Miller and his.
No, that wasn't who I was thinking of actually.
Okay. I thought, because for me, Von Miller is the best defensive individual performance I've seen in a Super Bowl in my personal lifetime. 6 total tackles, 2.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. I know that Denver defense is called the no-fly zone. Not to take away from that secondary, it kind of helps when you have peak Von Miller there. A future Hall of Famer. Don't know if he'll be first ballot. That's apparently too high of a standard nowadays. But Von Miller winning the Super Bowl MVP. We know how important he was many years later to winning another Super Bowl. But just focusing on this, 2.5 sacks against Carolina, 2 forced fumbles in the box score, it says, was the heart and soul of that Denver defense and was the leader and helped. It was the Denver's defense playing at such an elite high level broke 2015 MVP Cam Newton, which, again, some people overrate, some people will take away from. I still think that 2015 Cam Newton is one of the better, just from a pure talent showing itself in the NFL, is still one of the best individual seasons, and Von Miller led the defense that put a complete stop to that. So Von Miller's Super Bowl MVP performance. Now, remember, there are 2 left after this. You only have 1 keep left. So you have to think something, Rick. Am I leading you astray? Are there other bangers after this? Or am I trying to get you to cut this one here? That's what you got to think about.
You're an Albanian bastard is what you are. Well, listen, I mean, I'm trying to think about maybe off-the-cuff Super Bowl MVPs, and there's only maybe 1 or 2 that if you throw them at me, I would be mad if I were to keep Von Miller here. That being said, I'm going to confess something, and it's going to be a bit of a controversial reason for why I'm about to do this, but I'm going to cut this one because I didn't really watch the Super Bowl at all.
Okay.
No, the Super Bowl to me was boring. It was not really exciting. It was not really flavorful. The halftime show was terrible. I didn't really care for the
halftime
venue.
show this year.
Coldplay and Beyonce.
Really? Damn.
Yeah, Coldplay the headliner. I didn't really care for it that much. Peyton didn't do anything. Cam was overrated in my mind. And the defense was going to be the defense, But this game didn't really do much for me. I do understand the rub. And yes, Von Miller probably, if I was allowed 5 keeps, Von Miller would be my number 5.
Oh.
But I kind of have to see and take this to the end to see what you're going to do. Like I said, there were a couple names in my head that if I kept Von Miller and you said these are your automatic cuts, I would be pretty pissed off about that.
But you're also assuming that I definitely have it because I've gone a little, up and down here, right? Like
Yeah,
I have some
you could
pretty good
have,
ones,
you
but
could have,
because like I said, like I'm honest, like
so
there.
long as Mark Rippon's not on the list because he knows what he did, I think we're okay.
So next on the no, I'm kidding. No, but final confirmation, keeper cut for Von Miller. I'll give you one more chance if you want to change it. I think you're taking too long. I think you're probably going to stick with cutting it, knowing you're a man of conviction.
Yeah. Like I said, I got to see this to the end, so
Okay.
I got to cut Specs McIntosh over there, Von Miller.
All right. Let's go one more modern era one here. Cooper Kupp. 8 catches, 92 yards, 2 touchdowns. Matthew Stafford threw for 3 touchdowns that game. I think it was under 300 passing yards. Or maybe it was just above whatever the final number was. But he also threw 2 interceptions. This is a very close Bengals-Rams game. Odell Beckham Jr. looked like he was the Super Bowl MVP for like a quarter and change. But then he got hurt. And Cooper Kupp said, let me show you all why I was the best receiver in football in this individual season. And took over. Game-winning touchdown grab. Fantastic. Has never been that level of player since, which is kind of sad. But hey, he's back in the Super Bowl. Maybe he'll get another Super Bowl MVP. But yeah, 8 catches, 92 yards, 2 tutties. Cooper Kupp. Now you need to make the choice. You need to try to outmaneuver me on what my last Super Bowl MVP pick is.
Cut.
Ooh.
I think despite the 2 interceptions, this was Stafford's Super Bowl. This was Stafford's revenge game, and this was, I think a better showcase for him to be, to finally answer the questions that have been dogging him for years. Kupp played very well and has no shame in that, but this would have been Stafford's time. Although I can understand if this was like sorry about not voting for you for MVP, Cooper. Here's your Super Bowl MVP, an award. But no, I got to cut it. So I got to keep the last one, but I got to cut it.
Okay. And your automatic keep, Rick. Man who won Super Bowl MVP. And he guaranteed a victory. Joe Namath.
Well, it only makes sense. It only makes sense with Justin not being here to have that one be it. That one is kind of dirty a little bit.
Oh no, 100%. But I told you.
I know you did. It is kind of dirty because he didn't really do that much. I mean,
he threw for 0 touchdowns. He literally did
right. He did what he did. He did what he does best, which is not do much. Matt Snell should have won it, or maybe George Sauer should have won it. They had better games, but I guess with the guarantee and the quarterback, but the thing is too that I can sort of understand why they gave Namath the MVP because, I mean, Bart Starr won the first 2, Green Bay quarterback. Len Dawson won the 4th Super Bowl MVP, Kansas City quarterback. I don't think, those were like the first 4. I think the first 5 of 6 were quarterbacks, right? Because you had Staubach, I think, 2 years after Dawson, and then Chuck Howley was in between Dawson and Staubach. So to kind of, and realistically, the quarterbacks were the stars of the league back then. So I guess you had to give it to them. I mean, I want to see what Bart Starr's, marks were in the first one. 16, 23, 250, 2 tutties and a pick. Okay. Wasn't wowing me. I'll tell you who I thought might have been on your list.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who I thought maybe kind of could have been there at one point or another. Okay, before I do that, Super Bowl 2, Bart Starr, 13-24, 202 and a touchdown. Not great.
The standards were not high back then.
No, they were not.
They did not think critically.
They were not. I honestly could have. I was gunning for a Desmond Howard. Kick return for a touchdown plus an actual touchdown catch. Would have been a fun one. Because technically speaking, he's the only Super Bowl MVP listed as a return specialist. So that would have been kind of fun. If knowing what I know now, I would flip Miller and Namath just
Right.
because.
Obviously.
But in the spirit of goodwill towards our champion and our corporate overlords, I will sit through gritted teeth say I'm happy with my keep four.
I
Happy
mean,
with my keep
well,
four.
here's the thing. You don't need to be happy with it. Like, I've seen plenty of keep four, cut fours where people realize they messed up and they say they messed up. So it's like, you have one mistake in there. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, but I mean, I think part of it too is that you can't jump so far ahead of the thing where you have no choice but to keep or cut the final two, because that kind of adds a little less drama to it. That kind of adds a little. See, I like the idea,
which is what I did last week.
Yeah, you did. I like the idea of going down to the end where like you have that like gut wrenching decision at number 7. Because, but if you take all the drama out of it by 6, then it's like you're gonna get either the desired reaction of, oh no, or the oh okay. It doesn't really add more to the flavor to me for that. So, but yeah, listen, I'm okay.
All right.
I'm okay.
That was this week's keep four, cut four.
How is it that Namath makes 2 consecutive keep 4 cut 4s on our show?
How's he made in 2 consecutive episodes?
So. Yes. Although I had a much tamer reaction to him being on this week's list than Justin did last week.
Indeed, he did.
Oh boy,
that was one big one.
Yeah.
All right. That being said, let's move on to the other piece of non-Super Bowl business before we get going here. Rick, the last head coaches have been hired. You can maybe say there's somewhat of a question mark here. Let's go with the obvious one first. And, we all know how Rick feels about Matt LaFleur. Tell us, what do you think about his brother, Rick? Because newly minted Arizona Cardinals head coach, the former offensive assistant at Elmhurst University in 2009, the former St. Joseph's College in, I'm seeing IN next to it, so I'm going to assume IN is Indiana.
Yes.
IN, quarterbacks coach, and then offensive coordinator. Davidson, offensive coach, and then finally he started as an NFL coach, as an offensive intern for the Cleveland Browns. Okay, then. And then many years later, passing game coordinator, Jets offensive coordinator for 2 years. I'm sure people remember that spell. And then you were still a fan during that time, Rick. And then finally now, after 3 seasons as the Rams OC, he is getting his first head coaching opportunity as head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, which, according to what I'm reading, he is the 45th head coach in the team's history.
Ooh.
So.
Yikes.
Yeah, I was going to say, not a great number, I'm sure, if we compare it to other teams.
Yeah.
So, Rick, again, we're starting with this one because this is the definitive confirmed one. The other one is it's 50, 75% confirmed, but there's still some air of question about it. So we're starting with the confirmed one. Matt LaFleur's little brother, but we'll call him Mike LaFleur, Arizona Cardinals head coach. Your reactions?
It's been a long time coming for him because he's basically been an understudy in every position he's been in for some of the best current coaches or coaching minds of this era of football. I mean, he started off as an intern with Kyle Shanahan in Cleveland, kind of followed him like a puppy dog to Atlanta and then to San Francisco afterwards, went with Saleh to the Jets, and then went to LA where he was with the Sean McVay. So kind of a lifer in the coaching wings. And it's an interesting mold. It's an interesting position for him to be in for his first head coaching gig. I mean, he is only 38, but he's been around the league forever, basically, it feels like. But I think, unfortunately for him, and I'm not quite sure why this happened, but I feel like he's been undercut already on day one because of the Cardinals hiring Nathaniel Hackett to be the offensive coordinator, which is basically like hiring the sand in the hourglass to be the sand in the hourglass. It's stupid. You're not giving LaFleur a shot to run his offense. You're putting it behind a guy who is an absolute moron in the coaching world, and Hackett, who I don't think anybody can stand him. So I feel like it's going to be an interesting proposal for them because Arizona does have kind of a lot to figure out right now. They do have a very high draft pick going into it. They might try and figure out what's going on in their quarterback room first. LaFleur can be a good guy for that to help out with questions about Kyler Murray or Jacoby Brissett, or God forbid they have Keaton Slovis. But they could be a team that could draft a pretty talented wide receiver at number 3, and then you've got somebody at your number 1 who has been pretty disappointing over his first 2 years in Maserati Marv, who's more like a Pinto than a Maserati at this point. But you also have Trey McBride, who's one of the best tight ends in the game, and my personal fantasy draft hero, whose jersey I will be getting in time for our mock draft this coming April. But yeah, I mean, listen, I think, like I said, he's a guy that I think has kind of waited his turn long enough to get the head coaching gig. And if he can make something out of nothing, if he can kind of turn things around in Arizona and give them a semblance of stability and, an idea of how they can make things work, they might be in good shape. I mean, you're looking for a guy who at the very least is going to have a win percentage similar to the only guy who has a positive win percentage in Arizona Cardinals history in Bruce Arians, which if you can believe that. Even Wisenhunt was only 45-51 in his 96 games there. I think he went to that Super Bowl. He was head coach of that Super Bowl against Mike Tomlin. So
I think it was those later years that kind of cost him the above 500.
Oh yeah, of course. But again, it's if you go back from it, there's not been, aside from Arians, they haven't had success since the Don Coryell years in the 70s. So they need somebody who's going to be there for a while and project stability and be a good mind. And I think Mike LaFleur's got a good shot at that. I think he could be a positive influence on these young kids. So I'm kind of excited to see what it'll bring. I'm not excited enough to say that they're going to be the number 2 seed like I've been, jonesing for the last 2 or 3 seasons. God help me. But I think they could be okay. They could surprise people. They could win 6 or 7 games this year. Why not?
I'm going to be interested to see what the commitment level is going to be to keeping Kyler Murray there, because it really felt like the way the season ended that his time in Arizona is about to be over. And
yeah.
And just the tough part is the contract. Will Arizona be able to move on from that? Is it going to be a fresh restart? Like, I think this is almost similar now. I confused GMs last time. I'm not going to do it again. But, with the Dolphins situation, what I thought there, what direction is this roster going to go in for them to be built around? And is the head coach going to get the leash? Like, I feel like you kind of need to get, like, it's hit or miss, right? It's, sometimes it's the right thing to get rid of a head coach because then the next guy you find, like even Super Bowl winning head coaches, we've seen them get deposed. Like Doug Peterson was fired a couple of years after Super Bowl. They bring in Nick Sirianni. We had our thoughts to say about that, but ultimately they won another Super Bowl with him. Ironically, they might be firing him soon, but maybe in the next year or two. It's kind of one of those things where it's like I can see the argument of people saying it's like, in certain situations you do have to, keep trying to find the right guy. And I do see that. But I also see a situation where it's like you kind of need to give patience. And I almost feel like this is that kind of situation. Like he's not going to perform miracles because this team is now they've been accruing talent the last couple of years, but there's still more to be done, right? Like you mentioned, the Marvin Harrison Jr. Drafting, year 3 is going to be a critical year for him because if he doesn't show himself to be a guy that, just look at his own draft class, right? Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. If he doesn't come up to even 85% of their level, like it's going to be a problem. The offensive line, aside from the young tackle they picked a couple years ago, is the rest of the line there. How many of these defensive players are still? Is Budda Baker finally going to get traded? Right, that's been talked about for years. Like, are there blue chip long term talents on the defensive side, or how many more of those? Like there's so many choices that need to be made. Where it's like I feel like LaFleur needs to get a proper year or two to even just see this team built alongside. And maybe that's the key. Maybe this is the choice of a general manager, because the management has shifted a little bit, right? Like in Arizona the last couple of years. Yeah. So it's like maybe this is the proper get right our guy. We're lockstep and we're going to go all in. Just don't go 1-16 is probably a fair goal, but there's going to be some tough seasons in Arizona, and give them time, let them work.
Well, I think this is Monty Ossenfort's last shot as general manager. I mean, I would even go so far as to say that if they don't improve this year, that obviously they're going to hang on to LaFleur, but I think Ossenfort's going to go
Right.
because
Right.
he's been in the GM spot now. This will be like his third season, and
Yeah.
he's seen terrible years from Gannon, and now he's on his second bolt in the chamber, which I know you talk about it all the time as a GM, GM head honcho and hitman. You only get so many bullets in that chamber unless you're Tom Tedesco and you get the whole freaking gun. But, you need to have some sort of stability. You need to have a positive output and a positive outcome, and even draw players to Arizona. You want to have guys that want to go play in the desert, not run away from it. And so if they don't do well here, I can see Ossenfort being gone as well.
Right, because this was his second hiring.
Right.
So, like, he was the guy that picked Jonathan Gannon last time. So
we saw how well that worked.
I was going to say and maybe it's one of those things where he ended up hiring Gannon a month after he became the general manager. So it's one of those things. It's been a couple of years, you see. But now, again, I think the true X factor is Kyler Murray still going to be on the Cardinals next season? And do you give LaFleur? Do you give him the shot? Because let's be honest, Gannon was not going to be the guy to help out Kyler specifically. Gannon was to try to help out, build things up if it was possible. And it just wasn't working out. I think we could all realize that.
Right.
Now with LaFleur, you're hoping for the culture part, but now you're hoping okay, maybe could this be the guy? Can he make Kyler look? I don't even know what a fair percentage would be from that. What was it? It was that 2021 season was the best he's ever played, right?
Right.
Can you get him to at least, decent passing touchdowns, low interceptions? Still, can he make a play here and there with his legs, right? He's not going to be the same he was at his best, but can he still make a play here and there? That's what it's going to be. So I'm be interested to see what they can do there. So from that head coaching hire to a head coaching hire, it's sort of up in the air. It's kind of been reported as done, but there's no official confirmation. I think this is extremely similar to the Kellen Moore situation last year when it came to the Saints, because we didn't get that full confirmation until way a bit after the Super Bowl. So maybe this is that. But the Raiders, Rick, for all intents and purposes, if we are to believe it to be the case, they have hired Clint Kubiak. And he's going to be the official head coach once the Super Bowl passes, once the dust settles. He will be the next head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. I think this is probably I think from the beginning, this was probably the one I earmarked the most. The fact that I don't see a world where they don't take Fernando Mendoza. So you're going to have a number one overall pick at your quarterback.
Right.
And, the Max Crosby situation, I don't know what the updates have been. I don't know how tenuous it might still be because of how last season ended and the way they approached the end of last season.
Right.
Is this also a case if you bring in a younger guy that maybe Max Crosby can have a closer, communication relationship with, that maybe there's a little more see eye to eye kind of deal. And maybe if there were any negative feelings built up during the season, maybe Clint Kubiak can convince Max Crosby to smooth things out and try to stick it out for another year or two, right? Just a communicator. Like for Mike McDaniel, one of the good things about him that started, but one of the things he eventually led to his downfall is that it seemed at the start of his tenure at Miami, he had a good rapport with his guys, right? In the locker room. He was seen as a player's coach.
Yeah.
Then he started to lose the guys a bit. And whether that is, maybe it was his message not coming across the same, maybe it was the difference in the locker room. So many factors can lead to it. I think the Raiders, whenever this is made official, aside from the offensive mind that is Clint Kubiak, because they're getting an offensive mind for their soon-to-be first overall pick quarterback, I think they're really hoping that they could get a guy that can communicate with the locker room, be a good player, be a good source for his players. Now, if he can also find that mix of being a good disciplinarian in terms of being a leader, then that's even more. So let's assume that this is going to go ahead, Rick. Post Super Bowl, he will be the official head coach. What do you make of that Clint Kubiak is going to be the Raiders head coach?
I mean, listen, he was a very good offensive mind for a resurgent Seattle team that, has built its success this year on excellent offense along with otherworldly defense. I mean, you could make arguments that JSN would have been JSN without Clint Kubiak there, but I feel like having his guiding hand kind of helped things along the process. The one thing that worries me when it comes to this hire is that if you look at the trajectory of Kubiak, this is his sixth team in 6 years that he's been a coach of. In the last 5 years, he's been in a different stop each time. He's either replaced certain people or he's been hired to go do other things. and there's never a consistency when it comes to him staying power. So you gotta hope that at least in Vegas he can last for a couple of years, because you don't want to be back at square one again, whether it's him making the move or Mark Davis being the one saying, "No, this was not the right hire." Um, this was another one where it was time was coming for him. Like, he was definitely going to be a head coaching, you know, candidate and a head coach at some point. Um, Another young guy, another pedigree there from family members, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how he performs. I think, like you said, you don't really know what's going on in Vegas with Max Crosby. You don't know what's going on with the rest of their team that's over there. They have the number one overall pick. You know it's going to be another, question mark there of what exactly they're going to do. Because, I mean, everyone says they're taking Fernando Mendoza, but this is the Raiders we're talking about, so anything is possible with them. Um, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see where they try and fill the right spots with the right players, and how Kubiak can try and make that work. Because, I mean, again, he's gonna basically be working with a totally new staff. There's nobody on staff for him and for John Spytek to work with at the moment. So he's got to hire his staff, and he's got to do it at the very tail end of the coaching cycle. This is the one thing that I think is predominantly an issue when you're honing in on a guy whose team is going all the way to the Super Bowl. By the time you get to that point, you're at the very bottom of the barrel of coordinator options or of anything of that nature. So it's going to be very tricky, I would say, to hire the right staff there, especially for a team in Vegas that needs the right staff to be able to kind of shepherd themselves forward if they do end up taking Mendoza. So very interesting times. I think it'll be an uphill battle for him in Vegas, and we'll see if he lasts past year one. Again, either on his own reconnaissance or on Mark Davis's.
Right, and I will say, like, to the point of like him and being at so many stops in the last couple of years, I think part of it is the fact that as you're a guy like him and you start to take on more responsibilities, you do start to want to go somewhere where either it'll make you better or you do get that higher role and responsibility that you so crave and desire to eventually get you to this point. Like, he was with the Broncos for one season with Nathaniel Hackett. And aside from then taking over offensive play calling from him, then he went to San Francisco. Learning under Kyle Shanahan for a year is pretty freaking good. Then he goes to New Orleans and replaces Pete Carmichael, who someone was going to eventually, because that dude was doing it for way longer than he should have.
True.
And then those first couple of weeks when Derek Carr still had a shoulder looked pretty good.
Yep.
And then he gets an even higher role. It's like, okay, you had a pretty good season, but now you're going to be in Seattle. Now we're going to trust you to work with Sam Darnold, who just had a really great season. And it would have been, and there's some risk there because, on one hand, you also have to look at the coaching situations and how they change. He was never going to become the guy in San Fran because it's just John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. You talk about having bullets in the chamber. Those two are locked in. Like, if one goes, the other's probably going to go as well. It's like, that's how tied together it is at this point.
Right.
You look at New Orleans, well, they fired the head coach in Dennis Allen. They were never going to keep Clint Kubiak with Kellen Moore coming in and wanting to run things his way. So he goes to Seattle, has a great year. And now this is a guy, like, he's now ascended to the spot that he wanted to. Like, if there is one positive we could kind of say, it's like he's been at so many different stops the last couple of years. He probably has a good Rolodex of guys that he could reach out to and maybe want to try to make. Can he reach out to any of the guys that he worked with at his past stops that maybe they were the linebackers coach, maybe they were the defensive backs guy? I don't know if in either of his stints in Denver, if he was with Evero, maybe he makes a call to him, a guy who's been a DC with some successful teams. You bring in a guy, if they did work together, if you've seen him and you know how he works, if you trust that kind of guy, right? Like, just the experience and the different people he's gotten to work with and I'm sure interact with in all his matchups. It's going to be very interesting to see. Like we said, I think this year more than most, especially for us pointing it out. And look, can I name you the quarterback coach for the New York Jets? No, I cannot. I'll admit that. But it's important to point out that hiring a great staff along with the head coach does matter. And I think in this head coaching hire, I think we have noted it. I think other media have as well, especially YouTubers. But like, I think we've done a good job at pointing out, like, okay, important thing about all these hires is who are they bringing with them, and if Clint Kubiak can bring in a couple guys he trusts, bring in a good OC to run the offense with him that he'll also trust, and it could be kind of a shared role or at least a collaboration in terms of even if Kubiak is calling the plays, does he have a guy to bounce off, the play calling with? Can you trust your DC? Things like that. I think this head coaching cycle is showing that a lot of these guys, these hires are going to matter alongside them. So it's going to be interesting to see who he brings with him to Vegas. Again, still need the full confirmation, but I have to imagine that no matter what the result is, he's going to be the Vegas head coach. If for wanting to become a head coach as an OC, you're going to walk in with the first overall pick quarterback like that. There have been worse situations to walk into as an offensive coordinator becoming head coach. So
not wrong.
It's going to be interesting to say the very least what all happens. And again, if you draft Mendoza, you look at the weapons there. Ashton Genty is going to be so happy that a modern NFL offensive mind and not Chip Kelly is going to be calling the plays for him.
That's true.
Brock Bowers, right? If he can be healthy, there's some decent little pieces there in Vegas. And if Mendoza can be, even if Mendoza caps out, of course you want to be better. But let's say Mendoza caps out as anywhere between 8 to 12, in terms of top quarterbacks.
Yeah.
First off, for the standard of the modern number 1 overall pick, that's not bad.
Still pretty good.
Exactly. So I think there's a real chance that when this is official, they could really nail this. They have some talent there. They have some weapons. The only team I could have seen Clint Kubiak going to outside of going to Vegas would have been another team who hired an OC, which is the Falcons. And I think in this case, I'd argue the quarterback situation here is going to end up being better than Atlanta. Yeah. Now, the skill position, there's more experience, more proven talent in Atlanta. I'm not going to question that, right? I've praised Bijan on this show before. I think Drake London is great. But if you want to talk about potential, and then with the quarterback, Vegas, this may have been the right call. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting to see when we get the fully confirmed news of that. So, Podfather, let's not waste any more time. Let's go to the Super Bowl. Let's go to the stories of the Super Bowl first. I just want to tell the story of these two teams here really quick, Rick, because we also did this in the description before we get to this. Because, one thing, even though I feel like sometimes it might be, maybe it's over-exaggerated, overused word, but the story behind both of these teams, to me, is one of the most interesting of this matchup. Two teams that missed the postseason last year, right? And two teams that not only did they miss the postseason last year, kind of going in the last 2-3 years through complete changes for the franchise. On one hand, with Seattle, you have a team that it was Pete Carroll's team for so long. And, the Legion of Boom, the 12-man in Seattle, that was an incredible run for that organization. And little by little, they start to lose those pieces. For a couple years, they were still a playoff team, but then it eventually became here and there. 1 year they could make it, 1 year they couldn't. They get off of Russell Wilson. They trade him away. They eventually, a year or two later, get rid of Pete Carroll. And last season, they go with a younger guy, a Mike Macdonald, gets his first year. Things don't end up going well, right? They missed the postseason. I think it was either 8-9 or 9-8, so just barely above the Mendoza line. Not a joke there to the soon-to-be number 1 overall pick, but they barely get past that line of being a 500 team or just below it. And you come into this season, you take the gamble on a new quarterback. You are kind of really, I think, this season more than past years, it's fully okay, JSN, we need you to be the guy. This was when he started his career, it's okay, JSN, he's going to start as a number 2, number 3 receiver. No. You have to be the guy now because there's no more DK, because Tyler Lockett is long gone. You have to be the guy to take the bulk of the receiving yards, the receptions, everything. You need to be the guy. Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, all this stuff. This defense being rebuilt bit by bit, draft by draft, signing by signing. And what a phenomenal season from them, right? Midway through, they're oh, this is a pretty good team. Maybe they're dangerous. Couple more games. Oh, okay. They beat the Rams. It's oh, they're going to win the division. They might win the division and be the top seed in the NFC. And they did that, and they went through the first 2 games of the postseason. They showed us a lot about themselves mentally and also in terms of the plays that they can make. They absolutely demolished the San Francisco 49ers, and they defeated the LA Rams. It's one thing when you play a team 3 times in a season, right? Not a lot of cases where you play 2 teams 3 times in a season.
Right.
And in the case of the Battle Lions, they got the last draw both times. They won both times, the third critical matchup between them. So they literally, in what I think on the NFC side was the best division in the conference, and maybe you could argue the best division in football, they proved to be the best team of the best division and arguably the best conference. There were about 2 or 3 definitive Super Bowl caliber teams coming into this postseason, I think, when it came to the NFC. And now they're making it to the Super Bowl. On the AFC side of things, the Patriots don't need an introduction. For 2 decades, this team ruled the NFL. For 2 decades, this team was the class and standard bearer of the AFC, of the NFL as a whole, right? Divisional championships, double-digit win seasons, constant Super Bowl appearances, the Patriot way with Belichick, the excellence and total team player mentality of a Tom Brady. This team ruled the roost. Then the cracks started to form, and this team fell apart. And not in a bit-by-bit thing like Seattle. This team literally fell apart like that. There was a blip of a season in 2021, but it was not the same Patriots team anymore. They have a one-year head coach stop in 2024 in a decision that clearly it was, I say all due respect, it was a promise that was kept, and clearly after a year, they're like, no. And they go back to a somewhat familiar face. They take on Mike Vrabel. And again, a couple years of drafting well, a couple years of smart free agency signings, and the Patriots, they start to win some games, and it's like, okay, maybe they could challenge. They beat the Bills that first time. It's like, oh, they could do something here. And that kid that they drafted 3rd overall in 2024 that showed flashes in 2024, those flashes start to be a lot brighter in 2025 with some of the plays he was making. And within 5-6 years of the dynasty falling, a new one could be on the horizon, because this Patriots team, the 2nd seed in the AFC, played in the 1st round, handled the Chargers, played in the 2nd round, were able to easily make CJ Stroud look like his NFL future is in doubt, at least with the Texans, and then defeated the Denver Broncos in the Mile High City, backup quarterback, X, Y, and Z, whatever. They defeated the number 1 seed in the Mile High City to make it to another Super Bowl in franchise's history. So these two teams, the paths they've taken, it's almost like 2 sides of the same coin. There's differences, but there's so many similarities between these 2 teams in terms of the stories and how they got here. And I just wanted to say that because I think what sometimes gets lost is the journey that had to be gone. And yes, at the end of the day, what matters is who wins. I fully understand that. And we will praise the winners this offseason, and we will lament and say, what did the losing team have to do to make a difference, and what can they do next year? But I think for both teams, the journey that these 2 teams had to go on to get back to this point is something I think should be given notice to. So that is the stories of this Super Bowl going into it. And now, Podfather, let's go into the analysis. I'll stop talking for a bit, and I'll throw it to you. Patriots, Seahawks, so many different ways. Rick, I'll let you lead the things off. What are the top things that you're looking for in this game?
The question that I have realistically is going to be whether or not these 2 defenses can stop the secondary and tertiary options when it comes to offensive. Because, in a lot of the Super Bowls that we've seen over the past couple of years, the running games have kind of disappeared somewhat. You talked about that LA Rams, Cincinnati Bengals Super Bowl where Cooper Kupp had the 2 touchdown catches. Well, Cam Akers ran for 23 yards, I think, after he had a really good season to begin. The more you talk about more modern Super Bowls in like the 2010s and 2020s, the less you see of running backs kind of performing like running backs do. And both of these teams have very good running games that are going to be hampered by how dominant the front 7 are. Seattle also has a few injuries to worry about. Zach Charbonnet, he's done. So who's spelling Kenneth Walker but George Halani, who, I think just got off the practice squad before the NFC title game, didn't really do that much. Whereas the Patriots have that 2-headed attack, that if they can use it properly, of Stevenson and Henderson. And that's kind of their big, go-to option if they can't get Drake May going. But I think one of the other big keys here is going to be that we're going to see that battle the entire night, and it's going to be interesting to see how, the battle wages out. But JSN versus Christian Gonzalez is going to be must-watch TV. There might be some times where Carlton Davis goes on, that side of the field to guard, but let's call it what it is here. if Mike Vrabel doesn't have Gonzalez, his top premier all pro, all world corner, against JSN, who needs no introduction, then the only ghost that they're going to see is the ghost of Dick Night Train Lane, who's saying, "Why aren't you making any interceptions? Because you're not, getting the right guys in there." Um, this has, to me, and I really hate to utilize this as a thought process here, but this to me has all the makings of a possible blowout. And not in a good way for one team in particular. And I think it's because of the fact that we've seen their offense struggle so mightily this postseason. Whereas, their defense has been great, but the one thing we know about good defenses is that good defenses tire when they're not off the field for a long period of time. And, one team's offense can at least keep things churning along and moving forward, but, it's going to be interesting to see if, that opponent that's on the other sideline can figure things out and stand up to the challenge. I think this could be a game where, it starts off close. Like maybe, if you have your Super Bowl box, for example, and you've got 0-0 in the first quarter, you might have a good chance of winning some money here. Or 3-0, or 3-3, whatever it is. But as you go further along, I think that one team is more well built for this, and one team needs to get out into an early lead more so than the other team does. Like one team has to kind of make that first punch and like really smack the other team in the face to try and play keep away. It's akin to, I'm trying to think of how best to put this. I'll go with this example. If you're Rey Mysterio and I'm 7'2" or 7 foot even, the Big Show, Great Khali, Giant Gonzalez, the Yeti, whatever it is. If I'm Rey Mysterio, I need to work on early strikes to confuse my opponent, and then maybe that'll keep me around for long. I'm not going to win the thing if I don't do that, but if I do that, I have a chance of not being squashed, or if it's Great Khali, squished. So, that's the only way that I could put it. And I think you kind of have an idea of where my head is going, but I'm not saying it because I'd rather give all that towards the end. But I think anybody who can kind of read between the lines and read the tea leaves knows the direction that I'm going to go with for this one.
Yeah. And we'll focus on like a bunch of matchup stuff here and like some more analysis before we get to our predictions. We're going to talk for a little bit about this. Like, no, I'm with you. I think on both sides you have a very interesting receiver corner matchup that I'm going to be watching for. Like you said, Christian Gonzalez and JSN is the matchup. It is the matchup of this Super Bowl. Christian Gonzalez, when he's been healthy, and he was healthier this year than he has been in years past, he looks like an all-pro caliber corner, to say the very least. And he could shut it down. He can help with coverage. He could do everything. And now he is going to – this is the most important task he'll have in his young NFL career, the most important task of this season. He needs to help hold in check the guy who, look, is he the best overall receiver in football? I don't know. Is he really the best number one wide receiver? Maybe you take a couple other guys before him. But strictly in this season, regular season and postseason, the list of people who are better than Jackson Smith and Jigba has been from 2025, from the fall of 2025 to here now in the winter of early 2026. It's not a long list, if many names are on there, if any at all. Like, that's how high of a level JSN has been playing at. Like you said, like they're gonna, you know how the Patriots go. They're gonna throw some bracket coverages. There's gonna be a couple plays where Davis is going to help a little bit, or the safety is going to give some support with Gonzalez. But ultimately, it is going to be that matchup, and the confidence. If Sam Darnold can hit JSN early, if he hits him early a couple times on the first drive, I think it could be a telling thing for how the game goes, because if you let a quarterback in Sam Darnold, who, I mean, that's where the ghosts aspect of it comes up, right? Like, this is, and I didn't mention this in the story part, but another number 3 overall pick quarterback the redemption tale that could be on the line and what he could completely change about his perception for people if he were to get this done. Where I'm saying this right now on shows, on podcasts, YouTubers, a lot of people had Sam Darnold extremely low on the list of quarterbacks that they trusted going into this playoffs. And look at him being one of the last two standing. He didn't have to do a lot in the San Francisco game. But when he had to make some important plays against the LA Rams, a team that a lot of us have thought throughout a majority of the season as a Super Bowl caliber team, he made plays. He made some real plays. And this is going to be another case again against a top tier Patriots team. Like both of these teams have faced some really good defenses, right? Like even though they were extremely injured, we know San Francisco is usually a pretty good defense. We know the Rams were an amazing defense for Seattle to deal with. The Broncos and the Texans were both pretty freaking good defenses for the Patriots to deal with. And the Chargers were relatively respectable, but man, that coaching staff can't scheme a postseason game.
No.
Especially the old offensive staff. So now you have a situation where both these teams are kind of facing like it's almost like I call the two sides of the same coin, but it's like, there's a lot of similarities between these two. Now, like you start to give some edges here and there, with Kenneth Walker being by himself, you give the overall potential of the rushing game to New England because they have a two-headed beast with Drake May, who's also a little bit more of a rusher compared to Sam Darnold. The number one talent overall, if you look at the skill position, probably lands on Seattle when it comes to JSN. And neither team is necessarily, it's not special depth, but it's extremely good players. It's Cooper Kupp, who we mentioned in this episode, former Super Bowl MVP, is that second guy for Seattle if they want to get him the ball, right? It's on the New England side, the way that they are able to scheme things and how Stephon Diggs has looked pretty good this season for all things considered. Off the field stuff is off the field stuff. When it comes to on the field, Stephon Diggs is still a pretty freaking good wide receiver at what he can do. I think for me, so that's one of the things like you mentioned. I think for me, and I'm going to focus on one over the other, but it's critical for both ends. The trenches, and I think specifically Seattle's front seven against this Patriots offensive line, because you want to talk about the struggles that the Patriots offense has gone through. Part of it is because of the fact that the offensive line, which was pretty good throughout a lot of this season, that helped Drake May make the plays that he's made, is the fact that this Patriots offensive line has started to have like just pitfalls in this postseason. And that's what happens, right? Like a young offensive line, some relatively young guys, but Will Campbell has definitely been kind of manhandled in some instances here in the postseason. And this Patriots offensive line has not allowed Drake May to be able to have this clean pocket. He's thrown he's thrown like a good amount of interceptions, right? Like he's thrown some INTs. Yep. He's had some bad plays. He's had probably a near miss or two when it came to the interceptions as well in both the Texans and the Broncos games. Like it hasn't been the same clean game that they've had. And of course, in the history of football, we could say this about every single game, every single team, every single side. So it's not like a special kind of analysis, but I think in particular here, if Drake May doesn't get a clean pocket to work with, if he doesn't have that extra second and a half to be able to give it to or to try to get it to Diggs or Keyshawn Boutte or anyone like that, if he even has to hesitate, should he run or should he pass for a brief moment, that's critical. In this game, above all else, of course, that's critical. And it's a credit to the Seahawks defensive line. They've been phenomenal. Murphy and Leonard Williams have both been great, helped out by that amazing secondary, right? That's one of the better built secondaries, like all around. Like, we praise Christian Gonzalez, as we should. But Devin Witherspoon is phenomenal. Nick Onwari has been great.
Yep.
And, again, we talked about it last week. Don't make a stupid penalty this week, but Reek Woolen is a good coverage corner, right?
Yep.
He could catch an interception or two here and there. And Drake May has kind of been prone to throw those in this postseason. So I think the damage limitation that New England's offensive line has to do in this one is critical. Because if they're going to let Drake May get pressured consistently, it's going to be a tough one. We've seen what happens when quarterbacks can get pressured. Patrick Mahomes, who, even for all intents and purposes, is one of the better quarterbacks when it comes to dealing with pressure. Remember that the Tampa Bay and Kansas City Super Bowl? At the time, that was the record, I think, for the most pressures a quarterback had faced in the Super Bowl at the time. And we saw what happened with that Chiefs offense just could not do anything against the Buccaneers. We saw what happened last year where the Eagles defense was absolutely suffocating to Mahomes as well. And we've seen great defenses do that to other all-time great quarterbacks.
Yep.
So and again, this also applies to Sam Darnold. I'm sure people are going to be saying this. I'm not disagreeing, right? But one quarterback has made a lot more mistakes this postseason than the other. And the Seattle team is going to be opportunistic with that. And I don't see them, if you give them 2-3 interceptions, I don't see them coming away with 0 or 3 points like some of the other teams have.
No, I agree.
Seattle's going to take advantage.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And this is the last part. This is where I'm going to throw it back to you. There's a little alley-oop action here. Special teams. And I'm not just talking about the kickers and the punters. Rashid Shaheed has made a difference in this postseason. He's made a difference ever since the Seahawks got him for a relatively low acquiring price at the deadline. And he proved himself in the San Francisco game. And I think this could be another one. You mentioned Desmond Howard earlier. Rashid Shaheed's going to be very interesting to see what he does with kickoff returns. And I think especially punt returns. Field position is going to be king in this one. And the times that you're going to be able to get back onto the field, if you can have a great return to get you started at a really good position, that's going to matter. And Rashid Shaheed, it would not surprise me whether it's a kickoff or a punt return. I think he's going to have a deep one in here. I'm not going to call for a touchdown. I think that might be a little bit too bold on my end, but I think he's going to have a deep return here. I'm talking about like a 30, 35-yard return that can, you already have to work his handled for you because you're starting on the other half of the field. I think he's going to have a return like that in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't put it past him to possibly have a return for a touchdown. Maybe we'll have one that'll get called back for a phantom, block in the back penalty. Obviously, you got to watch out for all of those. But at the same time, I don't necessarily think that it's impossible to think of. I think, like I said, you're going to have one from either Shaheed or Marcus Jones. But that's the key. The key is going to be to make sure that you keep the ball away from arguably the best punt returner in his young career in NFL history. He's got an even better, even larger, yardage on those returns than Devin Hester ever did. And that's saying something. Devin Hester went into the Hall of Fame first ballot. So, it's an interesting discussion to have right there. I did want to point up one thing to you, though, and I do kind of want to make it so that it's kind of almost a fun trivia question for you, if you will. Since 2000, since the 2000 Super Bowl, and this is something that I talked about, we're going into the year 26, so we've had 50 teams, 50 iterations playing the Super Bowl since the turn of the millennium. You want to guess how many running backs have gone over 110 yards?
We've definitely played this game before. Are you saying strictly on the ground?
Yeah, on the ground. Strictly carrying the ball. 110. So
I'd say honestly, 110. Yeah. That number might be like 3.
You're close. It's 4.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah. But also to your point about Super Bowl MVPs that came out of nowhere, the only name that of those 4 that you might be like, oh, that makes sense that they would do that was Frank Gore in the Blackout Bowl,
right?
But you had Michael Pittman of the Buccaneers, the only one to rush for over 120 yards.
Wow.
Back in the 2002 Super Bowl. And then, believe it or not, in the 2006 game, which actually makes sense because of how bad the weather was in that game, that was the Prince game, both Thomas Jones and Dominic Rhodes rushed for over 110. We haven't had a plus 100-yard rusher in the Super Bowl. Ready for this name? Since Damian Williams of the Kansas City Chiefs.
Dude, I remember.
Back in Super Bowl, what was that? 54?
Was 54. That was the first Chiefs Super Bowl, right?
That was the COVID Bowl. Because remember, a month later, the world stopped.
Right, yeah, that was the last Super Bowl before COVID. It's like they just got that in there.
Yep. So that's kind of why the running attacks go by the wayside and you have to rely solely more on your passing game. And I feel like, Seattle's got a few more weapons in the arsenal than New England does. I feel like New England has to rely more on those desperation throws in a way, where Seattle can kind of make things happen up and under. They can get the ball to, for crying out loud, Jake Bobo caught a touchdown pass in the NFC title game. Like, what is that about?
Just wait till he catches a Super Bowl.
I'm telling you, I would not be surprised if he's in the running for a Super Bowl MVP, to be honest with you. But, I mean, I feel like, A.J. Barner's going to be a pretty big target out there for them. Obviously everyone's going to watch JSN and Shaheed. Cooper Kupp is going to try, and make his case there. But listen, don't be surprised if you have a big game from a Kenneth Walker, just because the game plan seems to be stuff the front and watch out for the wide receivers. But Walker's a good running back. We loved Walker since he came out of college. He's a very, very talented rusher of the ball. Good after a contact, good at making the first move. I think at some point they might have to give him the ball and let him try and Marshawn Lynch his way down to the 1 yard line, and then the question is going to be: did Mike Macdonald learn from history or not? Which I guess we'll find out.
Yep. Guess we'll find out is the omen there, because we're very much going to need to see if history has been learned from. And I was going to say, the supporting pieces aside from the top 2 wide receivers, it's going to be interesting. And when I see that, I'm leaning a little bit towards Seattle in this one, because again, I think while you do have maybe like I said, the better rushing duo, I think Kenneth Walker has shown and proved a lot of people wrong in this one. In this postseason, a lot of people were worried when Charbonnet went down, and Kenneth Walker has taken the top bell cow status, and he's taken it in stride. He had over 100 yards against the Rams, and kind of like you're saying, if the key to this is going to be, will every carry matters, I think Kenneth Walker has a high chance to make every carry matter.
Yeah, I think that's New England's got 2 very talented running backs, that are Ramondre Stevenson and Trayvon Henderson, but like I said, and when we talked about this, it's how New England uses those running backs that kind of raises question marks here. You would think when Stevenson went down, or when they had their running backs go down, you would think they would give the ball to Henderson a little more, and they didn't really do that. So it's kind of one of those areas of what are they going to look for? I mean, listen, if I'm Drake May, I have to somehow figure out a way to get my guys involved. Maybe this is the rise of Efton Chisholm, the kid from Eastern Washington, the slot, the gadget guy. That's one thing that New England does better than anybody else, is find the no-name gadget receiver and make him a superstar. One game's all you need. You had the Wes Welker was the first one to do it, then Julian Edelman. Don't forget about Chris Hogan. He was a big guy, for them, a couple of, towards the end of Brady's career. And Chisholm fits that mold as well. My thing, too, the ageless wonder is on that sideline for New England. Austin Bloody Hooper is on that sideline. Somehow in his, I guess, first Super Bowl in his 97-year career, although the guy never ages, like Benjamin Button, he can get involved too. So there are weapons on New England's side. It's just my question is, how does Drake May handle the pressure of being this young into the league, and being in this big of a game? I think you got to look at the Jared Goff game and see how that goes, because, Goff was woefully unprepared and woefully overmatched in that one.
Yeah.
So
yeah. He's overwhelmed. And I really do think that, there's a perseverance X factor that's going to matter here. And Sam Darnold's weathered a lot, and it's going to be on him to make, again, for a second game in a row, not say he hasn't done this throughout the season, but he's going to have to make plays and make throws, and his arm is going to win or lose Seattle this game. He needs to play his best football of the season, and he's better have saved it for this game, because there's going to be expectations, because again, that Patriots defense, it's just a unit that they've built up and is so talented on paper. When you look at whether it's the front seven, with the likes of K'Lavon Chaisson coming out of nowhere for them and being a legitimate contributor after bouncing around a little bit, but a Barmore, a Harold Landry who followed Vrabel from Tennessee, a Milton Williams, one of the free agency signings of the offseason right there.
Yep.
Like I said, it is going to go both ways in terms of the impact that the defensive lines will make on the offense, but it's I trust Sam Darnold here a bit to be able to make some of these throws, and part of it is because he does have the JSN, he has the Cooper Kupp there, and we just mentioned him before. I think Clint Kubiak is going to come to this one, and and look, this could be the one where it's all right, guys, there's some plays we haven't tried yet this season. Let's have some fun. You almost if you're a coordinator, your offenses and defense, you got to save your best stuff for this very moment right here, right? It's one of those things that I heard people have said about Andy Reid, let's say, for example, in past, before he became the Super Bowl winning head coach, is that Andy Reid's offenses started to become predictable as you got later into seasons, and come the postseason, you knew the concepts, you understood what they were doing, even if you didn't know the exact play. I think if you're both sides here, but especially if you're Seattle, got to bust out everything. And kind of like you were saying, like I think it just in terms of diversifying the offense, like I think the ability to have like JSN can. This was said about him when he was coming out. He could. It's generic, but run every route on the tree. JSN can do that. He's a smooth, emphatic route runner. He also just happens to be dynamically talented as well.
Right.
Right. You have Cooper Kupp, who at the peak of his career, he was the go-to guy every single play. Right. Like he can be the guy to catch the 5 yard out. He could be that guy. Like Cooper Kupp has been there, done that. He has the experience, and he is that guy that JSN and Darnold can lean on, right? Like and also his blocking. Let's not even question that. Like if Seattle wants to have a chance, like he is a great blocking wide receiver in terms of once the ball is out there, once it's in the middle. If he's next to a defender, he gonna pancake. Like Cooper Kupp commits to it. So I just think the way that scheming can go, I think Clint Kubiak, I give a slight edge to him and what he can do with this team, with these weapons going into this game in that regard. I don't want to discount what the Patriots can do here because I do want to circle back to the offense. Like Drake May, again, he has been absolutely phenomenal this season. And him, Ramondre Stevenson, and Travion Henderson are probably the better all-around three-horned rushing attack in this one. Mm-hmm. And again, if you want to give, like, where do you give the favor? Do you give the favor to the better individual, or do you give it to the team effort? And it could kind of go either way, because I think with what Drake May can do, especially on like second downs in particular, I think have been his best rushing downs in this postseason, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Like what he can do to get a couple of yards to either get the first down or get it into a 3rd-and-1 situation. And then he has a Mac Hollins, he has a Kayshon Boutte who have been respectable. And I think the fact that those two guys have had like a Stephon Diggs next to them to alleviate the pressure has been a godsend for both those guys to have relatively decent seasons and relatively decent postseasons. Yeah. And look, people memed him about it, but I know you know this, Rick. When Stephon Diggs had the image so many years ago when he was in Buffalo and he was staring at the celebration, it's like one thing that I spoke about with a friend earlier this week is like look, if there's one player in this game that wants it badly, Stephon Diggs is towards the top of that list. Like, yes, I would not be surprised. We talked about it towards the start of this, right? The dueling game between Santonio Holmes and Larry Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
There's a chance we could get a Stephon Diggs and JSN back and forth. There really is. Like, we could get, like, and it doesn't necessarily need to be like the most eye-popping of numbers, right? Like, I'm not even talking about like 170, 160 stuff, but like, Stephon Diggs, like 99, 102, JSN, 113, 97. Like, I think both guys are going to be heavily involved. I think both of them are going to very much supersede expectations.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be interesting. And the, like you said, the explosive plays that New England has had to make this postseason, like, can they do that against the Seattle secondary?
Yeah. I think also one of the big keys is also going to be if Seattle can get pressure, because they were not able to harass Stafford in the NFC title game. I think they only had 1 sack, and it was from DeMarcus Lawrence. Their main defensive guys were basically shut out. Mafe didn't do a whole lot. Leonard Williams wasn't really a big guy there. Byron Murphy was kind of quiet. Derek Hall didn't really have much. Ernest Jones wasn't big. These are guys that need to step up and need to have a large game. And I think this matchup plays a little more favorably because of how young this Patriots O-line can be in certain spots. Remember when we talked about the 2 weeks ago, the X factors in the games, Will Campbell was my X factor in that Patriots game. I should have said Mother Nature, but I said Will Campbell instead. It's still going to be Will Campbell because, again, he kind of got away with it in the Denver game because of the weather, because of the Jarrett Stidham effect and everything else. But the more you look at the tea leaves here, the more you see that there are some ways that New England can have deficiencies on that O-line. You have all of that. And conversely, Seattle's O-line is where I give them the edge too, because this is a unit that's been together through it all, and they have some excellent players there. I mean, you look at guys like Cross and Lucas, who are your 2 bookend tackles that are monsters. Gray Zabel's had a very solid rookie season, I think, for them. Oluwatimi, their center's been excellent as well. So, and Jalen Sundell too. This is a good offensive line unit for Seattle. This is kind of where I feel like that tide's going to turn in their favor. John Benton, who's their O-line coach, he doesn't get nearly enough credit that I think he deserves for having this unit be as prominent as it is, especially now in his second season. I think that this is an excellent way for you to look at, that matchup. The trenches are really where this game's going to be won, and I also don't believe that, and I never believed this, but I'm going to just say it now, I don't believe that Josh McDaniels has the creative firepower on offense to overcome a Seattle defense that Aiden Durd has made in his second season. I mean, the Englishman's been phenomenal, cooking up great defenses, utilizing his players well, and it's really they beat you in so many different ways. It's not just mid coverage on there. They can run blitzes and they can run these corners, these safety coverages with Kobe Bryant, and you mentioned Emin Warrior that's there too. This is a talented Seattle defense that is really just all cylinders of the game. They're one of the best, if not the best, in the league. Now, New England has been the kingslayers of good defenses. They took out Houston in bad weather. They took out Denver in bad weather. So and it's sort of with the Chargers, with Herbert having a broken bone in his wrist. I'm just saying.
And one of his receivers dropping one of the most point-blank catches of all time.
When you peel back the layers, even though New England got in here, they deserved to get here, there were some deficiencies that you then realize that, well, if this didn't happen, would New England have survived that game against Houston or survived that game against Denver? And the odds don't point well in their favor for doing that, I think. So, but again, like you always say, if and buts were candy and nuts,
it'd be a lot more peaceful world.
Exactly. So,
no, yeah,
we are where we are for that reason.
Exactly, and it's going to be very interesting to see what happens here. And I think one of the things I brought up a couple weeks ago when we talked about the championship games, it's like the discipline factor of this, right? Like, we've seen Super Bowls be officiated extremely weirdly, man. I'm not going to say it's a good thing or a bad thing. I'll reserve judgment for after the fact, but I think it's a very telling thing where you just don't know what's going to happen in it. So discipline is going to be the key. Linemen need to keep their hands where they need to keep them. You got to be careful. Don't tug a little bit too much. Understand where the limit is. DBs are going to have to be smart, to keep looking back. Don't do the stupid thing where you only get look back to see where the ball is going to be to try to avoid it getting any defensive pass interference called on you. Tariq Woolen, don't be stupid after a play is made. That's the big one. I said it before, but it's like the team that is going to be able to hold their muster in this one and keep themselves composed is going to be the ultimate winner here. And whether it's composed in terms of, don't take penalties, don't make, bad mistakes, or whether it's keep calm if the other team scores first, it doesn't mean the game is over, but you now need to respond. It's all these little things like the Super Bowl. Like sometimes it's so obvious to say it boils down to one or two things, and that is just a simplistic way. And it's also, I don't want to say it's easy because it can be like this. Like ultimately, the team that can scheme it up better and will execute better will usually you would give the credit to winning, but it's the intangibles of the players on these teams that make the difference. And that is to me the most fascinating thing. It's the human aspect of this game that's going to be amazing. And I think for the Patriots, it's the you've gotten so much so soon kind of deal, right? Like I don't think they expected to be in the Super Bowl in year 2 of Drake May. And then you have Seattle, who, again, so they probably didn't expect to be in year 2 under Mike Macdonald. But you have guys on this team who have been through the ringers of an NFL career, and it starts with a Sam Darnold. It goes to a Cooper Kupp. You have the former number 3 overall quarterback who, ironically similar to Drake May, both number 3 overall quarterbacks, but was gotten rid of by his team. Went through a number of stops before ended up with an amazing season last year, and now another amazing one this year for Seattle. You have a Cooper Kupp who was at the pinnacle of the sport at one point, himself being a Super Bowl MVP, one of the top 3 to 5 receivers at his peak, now is a number 2 guy on a team. That is the transition for him from number 1 guy to number 2, number 3 option some nights, but being there for his team, fantastic. And that is the definition of a non-diva wide receiver right there. Cooper Kupp accepting his role no matter what. That is a guy you have to give a lot of respect to.
There's one other thing, too, that I think we also need to bring into the discussion point here, because it is the biggest game of the year and it is the final game of the year. It's also going to be a game where referees will be heavily scrutinized. But I will say this about the referee and his crew. Sean Smith is the referee for this year's Super Bowl. His crew has ranked, according to the NFL penalty database, lowest in offensive holding calls per game. They only average about 1.7, just a little under 2 offensive holding calls per game. 6th lowest in false starts per game with about 2 false starts per game. So offensively, it could make sense that they would be okay. However, where they do rank pretty high is on those DPI calls. They are the 3rd highest crew in terms of DPI calls. So you won't get any random holding calls, but you might get a defensive pass interference on Carlton Davis, who's one of the league's biggest defenders in it. And if it's controversial enough, you'll hear this all throughout Boston. So
there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Where do they rank on roughing the passer, just out of curiosity?
That I do not know for certain. I mean, roughing the passer is one of those things where it's like, it's so hard because it's not exactly a known, obviously.
Right. That's true. I mean, let's also be real. This league has messed up the perception of roughing the passer, because I'll look at some plays where they called it and it's like, really? That's roughing the passer?
The Patriots have played in total 20 games, I want to say, this season.
Yeah.
10 DPIs against Carlton Davis, which is the most in the league.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot. And that basically means that Rashid Shaheed, if he can use his speed to go deep and have Darnold try and throw him the ball, that's going to be an easy 40, 45-yard penalty on the Patriots, because you know for a fact that Shaheed is going to make sure that he's in a catchable position, and if Davis is not turned around to face the ball, then, that's where the problems lie. So.
Yep. It's going to be interesting. You mentioned the stats later from this crew. If people do come along this podcast and they're going to end up betting, and if there are any betting sites out there that have it out there, it's like over under on certain penalties. So I'm sure there are. It's going to be interesting to see if people take bets on that.
What I would say though is that in this game, take the over, because even though the pattern trends.
What is the current over right now, Rick?
Oh, I have no idea what it is, but whatever it is, take the over. Well, because again, if you look at the list stats of the crew of how little they've called certain things during the year, you know that on the last game of the year, they're going to be kind of a little more watchful, and maybe they're going to call a few more penalties here and there. I do see this game being more wide open, but don't be surprised if there's a couple of ticky-tack holding calls that they wouldn't normally call during the regular season, but because of the Super Bowl, I can't really let that one go. Holding on Abe Lucas, and then he'll just pancake the line judge because, it's funny.
Naturally. I will say, just taking a quick look at it, according to our friends at DraftKings, right now the Seahawks are favored by 4.5 points, and the total for the game right now is 45.5.
Ooh. Okay. 45.5 is pretty good.
I think there's a fair chance that probably does go over ultimately.
I think it will. The only way that I could see it not going over is if Seattle is up by so much at like the third quarter that they just ease off the gas pedal and let it become an exhibition game at that point. Don't necessarily know if I see that happening, but it's in the realm of possibility, I would think.
Yeah, always in the realm of possibility. Yep. All right, Rick, any final points that we want to make about this game before we move on to the prediction aspect?
Again, I think part of what needs to happen in this game is that you need, your punters have to be able to keep the ball away from the returners. Michael Dixon is great with that when it comes to being able to, get the ball, side spin out of bounds, inside the 20, be able to kind of handle all that. He's built a very solid career on doing that sort of thing. I can't say that I know the same for Bryce Behringer, the Patriots punter. I feel like he's good at getting balls inside the 20, but, his net average isn't spectacular. And I mean, he's only punted the ball 19 times in this current postseason, but 37.3 yards average net. It's not great. So, he has to have a better game to keep the ball away from Shaheed. But I don't necessarily know if he's going to be able to do that. It's almost like putting Matt Dodge out there against Deshaun Jackson and watching what happens, So again, I harken back to our special teams discussion where it's all about that. Borregales is a rookie. Myers is a veteran. So you got veterans against rookies in the punt game and kicking game. So we'll see. We'll see what happens here between those. But I feel like that's going to be another big tide turner as well in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's more than fair. But all three facets of the game are going to have their role to play in this one when it comes to special teams, offense, and defense. And yeah, I'll just like hammer the point home one more time. Like I think with the quarterback play, I think with the skill position groups, I think with the one-on-one, whether it's one-on-one matchups or if you see zone I think ultimately at the end of the day, the impact of these defensive lines and what they're going to do, if they can wreak havoc on one or the other, it's going to be a long day for the team that doesn't come up to snuff to play well in the trenches. Whether it's Drake May struggling or if Sam Darnold's going to have a bad game because this offensive line filled with several guys that have been drafted by Seattle. Like this is a built Seattle team. This is a built Patriots team. They built through the draft a lot through the draft with smart free agency signings, smart trades. This is where all those draft picks that you've put in these lines are going to come through. So it's going to be interesting to say that who ultimately wins the battle of the trenches here. Because we've seen in years past, especially last year, like the Eagles dominated the battle of the trenches. And, sometimes you have to be really good. Sometimes you have to get lucky. Sometimes, they say if you're lucky, it's because you're good. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see how it goes. But the trenches to me is going to be the number one thing I'm looking at throughout the entire game, to say the very least.
Yep.
Underrated thing that we're happy about, Rick. No Taylor Swift at the Super Bowl this year.
Thank God. No Haley Steinfeld either, which
even better.
It's here or there.
Even better.
Is Sam Darnold seeing anybody? A ghost?
Not that I know.
Oh, okay.
Not that I know. Not that is Drake May? Is he seeing one of these modern day young? Actually, no wait. Isn't he like he's with his high school sweetheart? I think.
Yeah, I think he is. I think it's something like that. Let's see.
Oh, that's wholesome.
Yeah, no, he's married. He's married to a American baker and social media influencer, Ann Michael May. Who launched her Bakemas series on TikTok, baking a new item for each day of December this past December. Got to be honest, didn't watch it because I don't have TikTok. But I'm sure it's lovely.
I respect the content creators that make a daily December their thing.
Yeah, I'm sure it's wonderful.
I respect that. All right. And any last second betting advice you have for the people here, Rick?
Last second betting advice that I have for the people. Well, I would probably say that I don't really know a whole lot of his songs, but if I were to say what I think, what the first song would be.
Oh, like a Bad Bunny?
Yeah. I feel like you're looking at Titi Me Pregunto is probably the first song on the list there. I don't know. I would love for him to recreate his Backlash San Juan entrance where he walks out with the plunder of weapons to Cambeo, whatever it is.
Yep.
But yeah, I would say Titi Me Pregunto. I would say Green Gatorade.
Okay.
And I would also say that your Super Bowl MVP this year is going to be somebody that you don't expect. So find a weird prop bet and maybe bet on the Seahawks fullback, whoever it is. I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah.
To say the least, maybe he'll steal a couple touchdowns. Heads or tails of the coin, do you think? What's going to win it?
It will be tails.
Okay.
And it will be called heads, which will be the first blunder of the game.
Ooh.
Even though it'll be tails. They'll make a mistake, they'll correct themselves because the referees
the refs
are really nervous too. Yeah, they'll be nervous. Why not?
Oh, that's funny. Well, all right. Last second bets have been placed, have been predicted. Let's get to it. Podfather, Super Bowl predictions. I'll go first on this one. I think I always make a deal out of whoever has the ball last is going to make a difference here. I'm going to say it again, but I'm going to say it in a different way this time. I think whoever gets ball last is going to be playing keep away. I think this is going to be a 2-score game. I think it'll be cut to a 1-score game in the final, like let's say minute 59, maybe just over 2. I think the team that gets the ball last, it's going to be critical for them to hold on to that some bitch and hold on, keep holding on, and be able to get through. I think that's what's going to end up making the difference in this one. And I think in a close game, it'll end as a 1-score game. I want to be slightly unique with the score here. Give me a good old fashioned. Give me a 31-25 game. And give me the Seattle Seahawks to win this game. It's close. I could see it in both ways. I really do. I've talked about the story. We've both talked about these teams. So many similarities.
Mm-hmm.
You could truly make the argument go either way. I just think there's a little bit. Again, we're basing this off of our best eye test, our best thoughts, what we've seen, and also somewhat on paper. And just from all that, I give some advantages to Seattle that I think if this Patriots team was just a year or two older, I think I'd probably be leaning towards them. I just think that little extra experience kick that they're going to get in a couple categories, I think is going to end up making the difference for Seattle. So I'm going to have it be 31-25. I have the Seattle Seahawks winning the Super Bowl for the second time in franchise history.
Yes. I admire you thinking this is going to be a close game. I admire that heavily. I'm going to throw out some interesting prop bets and interesting scenarios that I think are going to happen or that I'd like to see happen. I think for the first time since 2007, you're going to see the opening kickoff return for a touchdown.
Ooh.
Whether it's going to be Shahir or Marcus Jones remains to be seen. But I think they'll get open, and it'll be that electric start that one of those teams thinks they needs. That being said, I also do foresee this being the first time since the 01 Super Bowl there will be 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns. But it's going to be the first time ever that it's going to be by the same team.
Oh, boy.
Because remember back in the 01 Super Bowl, you had Ron Dixon for the Giants return a kick for a touchdown. The Giants only points in that one. And then the next immediate kickoff was Jermaine Lewis going the opposite way for a touchdown.
Right.
So this time it's going to be 2 from the same team. I firmly believe that it's going to be Seattle getting the ball first. Shaheed is going to return the first kickoff for a touchdown. That's going to set Seattle up to go into the halftime break up huge. New England will make a bit of a comeback in the second half. They'll get it to within 2 scores. But then on that ensuing kickoff there by Borregales, Shaheed will return a second kickoff for a touchdown.
Wow.
On his way to Super Bowl MVP honors. And Seattle will close the door on this one effectively. Give me a 41-17 blowout in favor of the Seahawks. Shaheed is your MVP. I think the JSN catches the touchdown pass. Maybe Shaheed runs one in, so he'll have 3 combined touchdowns in that game, earning that contract that he had for the trade. Darnold doesn't have to do much because the defense will do everything he needs to, and special teams will carry the day. I also want this to happen because the last thing that my house needs is Ben McAdoo being a Super Bowl champion.
Oh, no.
As the senior defensive assistant for the Patriots, I think that would be the worst thing ever if he's holding up the Lombardi trophy at some point. No, not for me. Seattle in a blowout, 41-17.
Okay. I didn't even think of a Super Bowl MVP. Let me quickly think of one for me.
I mean, you can be basic and go with the quarterback.
No, I'm not doing that.
To be fair, I think would hurt Justin more. If the Seahawks win, he'd be happy. But then if they announce that Darnold's the Super Bowl MVP, I think Justin would be, angry as all hell and wouldn't show up for 3 weeks on the show.
Yeah, right. I'm going to give Super Bowl MVP. I'll say Sam Darnold throws at least 2 passing touchdowns, but both those sons of bitches are going to Jackson Smith and Jigba. Look, he's had an amazing season. He's been phenomenal, and I think that's only going to continue. I think he catches 2. I'll say he catches in my scenario 2 passing touchdowns from Darnold, so 2 receiving touchdowns for him, and he's going to be the Super Bowl MVP in my game.
I can foresee that. I can foresee him possibly challenging Rice's record for most yards receiving in the Super Bowl. I don't think he'll get to that point because 211 is a really high mark to get to.
Yeah.
But I could see him getting to like 190 or 205 or something like that. I can see it happening that way too.
I could see it being a bit less, but I also see the fact that if the Seahawks do end up building a big time lead, you're projecting them to do, I think they're going to learn from another head coach's mistakes in the past, and they're going to run the ball.
Yes.
It does not matter if it's 3 straight carries, that only end up for 6 yards. You want to know what all 3 of those carries will do? Kill the clock.
And in that scenario, my scenario, funny little spoiler prop bet too, George Halani will have more rushing yards than Kenneth Walker will.
Oh, let's go.
Yeah. Well, again, because I mean, if they're up by that much, Walker's going to come out of the game because why risk the injury? Halani's is going to be there running it.
They're going to make him run it.
I
Last game of the
agree.
season, they're going to make him
I
run it.
agree, but I'm thinking it's going to be like 65-60, something like that. It's going to be a low. We're not going to get a Damian Williams 100-yard rushing game, but it's going to be something like that. Something funky like that is going to happen.
Okay, so we are 2-0 on this podcast with predicting the Seattle Seahawks in terms of both. If Justin was here, because he didn't text us his prediction, to be fair, we didn't ask him, so I'm not going to give him any flack for that. Do you think he would have leaned towards Seattle here?
Yes. I mean,
yeah,
bias to one side too. I think that Justin appreciates excellent team football and excellent play all around. And I feel like there's a lot more of Seattle. Again, bias aside, I feel like that he would see a lot more positives in Seattle. Remember, this is the team that has come so far in podcast lore from the Max Unger trade. So
it's so true.
So when Justin finally has his win as the pick challenge champion, it's only fair that the team that made the Max Unger trade that he criticized them for so much comes around and wins the Super Bowl in that year too. I mean, it is written in the stars. You know that.
From him with the Max Unger trade, myself with despising Russell Wilson when we started this podcast, and anointing Geno Smith as a Ring of Honor, which I wasn't. He should be in the Ring of Honor one day for Seattle.
Well, I mean, again, if it wasn't for him, Sam Darnold wouldn't have gone into Seattle, and you wouldn't have the Super Bowl. So,
exactly,
transitive property, Geno Smith in the Ring of Honor. I'm on the bandwagon. Why not?
Exactly. Geno Smith ran so that Sam Darnold could sprint to the Lombardi.
Yes.
So, with that being said, there are our Super Bowl predictions, and I think it is fairly safe to say that it'd be a 3-0. I think this podcast is going to very much predict that the most superb of the Owls is going to be a Seahawk, which it might sound weird, but when you realize that the other answer would be Patriot, we're closer in the taxidermy.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
Relatively speaking. All right, Podfather, we got a heck of a show. One last thing to send us off with. What is this? I mean, I'm not saying it's themed of this necessarily. I don't know if it is, but a special Superb Owl edition of the Rostrum Podium.
Oh boy. Well, let's see what we've got here.
I feel like today alone could have given you a top 3.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is fair assessment there. All right. Here we go. Number 3 on my rant podium this week. Well, I mean, before we do anything else, honorable mention: Dallas Cowboys. We have to end the season on the high note that deserves it there. So number 3 on my rant podium this week. I don't think I mentioned this last week. I could be wrong, but if I didn't mention it, why is it necessary for kids to still be in school on snow days? When we were growing up, you had a day of snow, you went out and you played with your friends, or you built a snowman, you had an epic snowball fight after, shoveling the walk because, you were doing what, your parents told you to do. But regardless, it's a crime to me that we have 5-year-olds that are sitting in front of a Chromebook, instead of learning about, what, it means to be in a snowball fight or go sledding, or scrape your knee because the snow tube hit a hard sidewall or whatever the case is. There's a reason why I think Ezra Michael Keats's book, The Snowy Day, has the character Peter building a snowman, making snow angels, being in a snowball fight, instead of watching snow from behind a paywall while being on a computer learning his fractions. Come on. We need to, go back to a society where fun is a thing we can have, and not constantly reminding ourselves of, why, being in this silo of learning. It's stupid to me. There's no reason for that. Number 2. So I play some mobile games on, my phone, and I have the version that's free that has ads. Well, the Calci Bros annoy me. The Calci Bros are the most annoying things I've ever seen. It's oh, what do you think is the best way to get another job, more money in 2026? I don't know, get another job. My pick's I'm not sure. Oh, it's Calci, bro. Here's what you do. You trade on all this Calci stuff. What cup is this? What weather's going to be over here? Nobody gives a damn. About your fake app that is a scam that you want me to trade on what word is going to be said at the Grammy Awards? Like, who cares about any of that? Like, I think you got to vet applications that run through here because they're just stupid. Betting apps, are fine if you're betting on sports, but if you're betting on, what the weather's going to be or how many times that this person's going to say this word in this speech, like, we've reached the point in society where we've lost the plot. And I think we're just waiting for Nero to fiddle while it all burns down to hell, basically. That's kind of the big key there. And number one, I want to revisit an old number one rant topic from many years ago that I want to bring back into the fold. A couple years ago, there was a study, there was a town in California or a county in California that called for a state of emergency due to loneliness, because it obviously we're in this era of wokeness, and we're in this era of we have to basically we're afraid to be on our own.
Why do I feel like this is the third or fourth year you've brought this up?
Well, because nothing has changed, right? So, here I am again, spouting the virtues of it's Super Bowl Sunday. On the Super Bowl, if you have nowhere else to be, go to a bar, go to a party, watch the Super Bowl with friends, with your neighbors, with your roommates, with strangers down the street. Find a way to get to the Waste Management Open in Phoenix, the best party in all of golf. Because if they hit a hole in one on the 16th hole, everyone throws beer on the course. It's the greatest thing ever. You have guys that literally are golfing that hole in their college football jerseys, like for Arizona State. John Rahm does it all the time when he's not being on live. But regardless, like, there's things to do. There's people to go see. Call somebody. Call an aunt, call a relative, call somebody who, you haven't spoken to. Maybe you'll get a wrong number. Maybe you'll get them some of the phone and down on your face. But at least you're calling somebody and making an effort. It's one of those things where it's just, there's certain things that we do in our society that to me just scratch my head, because 20 years ago, this wasn't a thing. Like, nobody had an epidemic for loneliness. Like, it didn't matter. Like, it was one of those things where you invited that person to your party, and then when they came, it was like a nice little way, heartwarming, housewarming Hallmark commercial of nonsense. But now it's stranger danger this, and don't talk to this person that, and it's I'm going to be in my silo, and yes, sir, it's okay for my kids not to shake your hand and say hello. Like, they're going to be on their tablet all day. No, manners are important. Talking to people is important. Please, for the love of God, if you have nowhere else to go out and do something, or go be with people. Like, even, like I said, in SpongeBob, shoot the breeze with the mailman for all I care. It's fine. Like, it's somebody to talk to, or how about this? Even better than this, see if you can get a dog. Get a dog or a cat. Make a new friend. Go to a shelter, get somebody new to watch things with you. Be a, have them spayed or neutered, of course, Bob Barker style, of course, absolutely. But, it's one of those things where it's just, do something good in the world that makes you happy. That's not just sitting alone, looking out the window and staring and contemplating your life. This might be that time where you refine that resume. This might be the time where you, go on a coffee date, or go on, a coffee interview or whatnot, or, go to a library and read a book, or like go to a concert. Just enjoy something. Immerse yourself in the experience. And also, for God's sake, if you do something, please leave your phone at home, or leave your phone on silent. Nobody needs to see your vantage point of the concert from your terrible shaky camera angle with the person who's singing at the top of their lungs to a song that they have no business singing to and have no tonality to sing it to. Like, it's, I'm sorry. It's just sometimes it's just too much for me. That like, focus on like the negatives. But again, go out, go have fun this weekend, do it responsibly, and just be with people. Stop being lonely, because loneliness sucks. And even though they got to the divisional round this year, the Bears, still a disappointment. So,
one last shot to Adam Rank before it. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first. Don't let the loneliness consume you this Super Bowl season. Have fun. Hang out with your coworkers for the first time. Or like the Podfather said, if you're ready for it, adopt a little kitten or a pupper, or an older one. We love our senior cats and dogs as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Bring them into your home and watch the Super Bowl with them. show them the joys of football, especially if you're not rooting for either team in the game, because then you're not going to be losing your mind and stressing your pet out the entire time.
Exactly.
Exactly. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on this week's edition of the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. Rick, next week, officially another NFL season will be in the books for us on this program. Going to be crazy. I think, right, we've done 4 of these.
4?
We are a stubborn group. we are a stubborn group of guys.
Yeah, we are.
That just love having a weekly dose, except for the summer, of fun, football, and chaos. Join us next week when we give our Super Bowl reaction, breakdown, and more, and then join us for future weeks after that, because the offseason is going to be fun, and the spring and summer of the Sports Agents of Chaos 2026 will be a fun time, to say the very least. Thank you all so much for joining us on this week's edition of the podcast. Thank you so much. We love you all, and we'll see you all post-Super Bowl. All of you wonderful, superb owls that watch us. Take care.